what happened this year is that when I saw that Petcube are in search of product managers, that was quite interesting for me. Not many startups start with that. Yeah, and I just couldn't miss the chance, and I was lucky enough to join the team. So a couple of words about Petcube. It started all with this prototype and a real user need of one of the founders. So Sasha Neskin, who really did that sticky, gluey thing with a camera and a laser, had a Chihuahua called Rocky, I guess, who was very anxious and like he was going psycho when Sasha was at the office, and his neighbors were even calling police because of loud noises and so on. So he tried that just for his own sake, but then thought, hey, if it works for me, maybe it could work for other people. There are no products like this on the market. He was crazy enough to involve 2 other guys from his that time work. All of them worked in digital advertising, and then 3 founders started working on the product, so that in July 2013 they attended HAX, which is a hardware accelerator in China, and actually that is probably one of the best things to do if you're launching hardware. And in just a couple of months go to Kickstarter. On the Kickstarter it was quite a hit, so they got around $250,000, I guess, backed, and that is not really big digit for hardware when you launch manufacturing, in fact. In a year, the first product was out. It was this Petcube camera, and it rocked on Amazon for quite a long time. It allowed to invest or reinvest money in further generations. So by the end of the last year, Petcube delivered the next generation of the same concept of a camera with a laser beam, or laser tag game for the cats and dogs, which was quite much smaller, more performant, better camera, the night vision on board, and so on and so on. Introduce subscriptions, introduce some social stuff. And just this year, we also launched completely different device, which was a separate pain to deliver because it had a lot of mechanics inside. It can launch treats, so using your mobile phone you can just launch small bites, yeah, small pieces of food to your dog, so that mainly dog, so that it isn't bored when you're out. And actually the first item that I'm going to talk about is about these 3 products. So we have just them, and we product manage just these 3 products seemingly. Is it right or not? Like, how do you think? How many products are there actually for the companies that have this sold on Amazon? Why? Sorry? Well, first of there is only one problem. Usually that's anxiety and boredom of the pets. And by the way, that is very uncommon here in Ukraine, in CIS in general, but in US and in Japan, for instance, pets are treated very much like family members. And they start to get premium food, premium healthcare. They even have insurance now. So there is quite a market of for this year of 70 billion, I guess, most of which is food, of course, but a lot regarding different services. Okay, so the hint is that we actually discontinued the Petcube camera, the first device, when we launched the Play. Does it mean that we have 2 products now? Sure, I will answer no, because the customer numbers are 2-digit thousands for all of these devices, and we cannot just ignore. So it's not like mobile app where you update everyone and you're good to go. It's thousands of people who got the constraints of the first device, but still need to use the app and probably have at least some of the features that are released for the future generations. And of course, for us, it's important to upgrade them to the new devices and earn more money. But that's just the top of the iceberg. So all the layers that I found out there, being a product manager on the hardware, are this. It starts with industrial design, which you need to think about. And luckily, it's usually a one-time thing for the new product. It's all about the exterior, the aesthetics, their touch surface, how the aluminum is brushed, where the plastic is transparent, where it is reflective, and so on and so on. But mechanical design, let me try this thing. Does it work? Yeah. Unlike industrial design, is the guts that you don't see. And I thought, like, okay, you do that once, you forget about that, you focus on some features, software updates, and so on. Not the case. All the mountings, all the internal plastic, how the boards are done, can make iterations during the lifetime of the product. Sometimes because of manufacturing to increase the yield rate, to decrease the defects rate. Sometimes because you want just to save costs and you delivered first batch and then you, for instance, stop manufacturing for a month to do so-called tooling change. And tooling is the big molds for the plastic, which might cost thousands of dollars, like 5, 10, 20,000 for such devices easily, if you especially iterate. Platforms are the heart of the devices, and that is basically the CPU with something around it. The memory, the peripheral controllers that are built in, and you should really make the wise choice initially to do that, but it might be that for one externally perceivable device, like cell device, there are several platforms inside. And for you as a product manager, that means headache, because you might need to switch to other platform just in the middle of some big feature delivery, and you just can't avoid that because of performance reasons, because of end of life of some previous platform. For each platform, there is of course a firmware. Just like for mobile phones, maybe those of you who works with supporting new Android phones, you know about their board support packages. Everyone starts with it, builds on top of it. It's usually very unstable at start, and then you take all the pain to build some workarounds to make it work smoothly. So for each of this device and for each platform on this device, there is a firmware. Of course, there is some core, but builds are separate, and it means also separate testing time on it, separate limitations for some features as well that you should be aware as a product manager. Now, devices should be compatible and support some integrations if you want to go into that direction. Right now, we're launching some integrations with Amazon, like Alexa, all of you know about it, Alexa Skills, recognition of the speech, asking Petcube bytes to launch a treat when you are doing something in the kitchen and your hands are dirty and you can't take your mobile phone. Dash replenishment service is something about automatic reordering of the treats when the level drops low. And just on top of all of that, there are mobile apps, so something that users see additionally to the hardware devices. So just to recap, 3 hardware products, several platforms, firmware pro platform, 2 applications, and the cherry on the cake, there are features dependent on the CAMs, not dependent on the CAMs. So quite a lot of stuff. I probably even not able to tell, like, yeah, probably there are only 3 products, but if you look deeper, there are, like, if we call it sub-products, there are about 10 of them in combinations that you should keep in mind. And for me, that was a real surprise, and I need to take some time to get on with that and start managing there. That all applies to the features that are in your backlog. Some of them are just tweak on the hardware. For instance, changing the lens, changing the camera models, for instance. Some of them are moving from the lower level and to the firmware to support, let's say, automatic laser game. When you are not at home, when you are not at phone, you can still schedule it, yeah, and it will be then executed there on the cube. And only a smaller amount is something that's just about the features and the high level of mobile apps and backend. A lot of things, so usually each next task in my backlog now has different combination of the functions that you need to involve to making its way to production. Second question that I would like to you, how do you think how bad is selling hardware product with some issues? Known issues, unknown issues? Like just your perception as consumers. From product management perspective then? Yeah, so how good, yeah. So this guy with a cunning face just references basically what Lean says, yeah? If you are not embarrassed with something in your product, you're too late. You should do that. He says that about the software, and that's what I'm going to. Like in the hardware, you sometimes don't have a choice even, because it costs you a lot of money, it costs you a lot of time, and some things you find quite late in the process. So all of us know this nice picture. You should be iterative, not incremental. How's it looked for, or looks for the Petcube devices? So prototype, yeah. 1 and 2 is probably something like that. Here we have a polished, nicely packaged product which is sold by Amazon, which got some 5 stars along with some low ratings. But in the middle, really, it was not clear for me when I joined, like what happens there, what might be the problems. So what actually happens when you start doing that is that, yeah, you go through user needs, kind of, but for instance, for Petcube bytes, there were, I was not yet there, but I heard that stories and tales. There were about 8 iterations. But guys finally needed to stop after like a couple of months because they were already behind the schedule. And the final prototype was still not something that everyone was happy about. Yeah, so you go into into manufacturing of prototypes with still something unfinished. When you start doing that industrial design, you throw in money. Yeah, it's not the software where you can prototype quite easily. Yeah, now you can 3D print in-house, even in Ukraine, and that saves you some first steps. But until you go to some Chinese guys, until you have create some first molds and order some quick boards, you know nothing about how it all will come together. And until factory says you know, you can't connect boards like this because we won't be able to manufacture it. So then problems with sourcing the components, the hardware components start. And the team is solving problems like, okay, how to make camera not overheat. I will tell about that in one of the next slides. Then, when we're already doing that motorcycle, and of course it's not released, yeah, we cannot release that yet. We need to release the car, and preferably not call it back then. Someone, like for instance, your CEO or your designer says, hey, we want to launch it in a nice parabolic trajectory, but our motor doesn't support it. Can't we change it? And no, we can. Like, it's too late. And then your factory just tells you, hey guys, you wanted this change? Be ready to spend 2 more months when you have like 2 weeks maybe, and throw a pile of money on that tooling change. Another 10K. Not okay at all. So real fuck-ups that were there, and I will just go through a couple of them. So tilting a cam. In the camera model and play when we developed it, we saw that the field of view doesn't match the customer expectation in the previous camera model. It was more towards ceiling, yeah, which no one would like. We needed it to face the floor, and like, what can be easier? Just turn it down. No way. The overheating problem required the radiator, and no radiator model could fit near the top of the device. So guys just saw it off, like half of radiator thought to just fit the device. Night vision problem right here. Because of some shitty plastic piece that was not of good enough what's called transparency, yeah, refraction for us, part of the infrared light that was emitted by our night vision system, yeah, was reflected back to the device, and ambient light sensor felt it and switched back to the daylight. And it was an eternal process. So firmware team literally spent days trying to find the good threshold, but there was that workaround. Luckily, we have really bright guys on team. So that is the second thing that I actually learned. Learn how to hack, sometimes on the hardware side, sometimes on the firmware side, sometimes just in the copies, explaining for people that this feature works like this and not like that. Please expect that. One of their my favorite examples from the pet industry. This is a pet feeder called PetNet, and guys did a really nice job with the device. Except one thing: for many of their clients, the food just won't get dropped into that bowl, and that stand they needed to do a separate device, which they won't even upsell. Yeah, they needed to just make that SKU for the food to get to the bowl. Can you imagine that? Like, it's a shame, but they found a workaround. And for me, when I think about really big fuck-ups in hardware that required some fixing afterwards, I think about this. Anyone knows like what this can be about? Hubble story, changing the whole lens in space because it didn't work as it expected. And when I think about that, that's always calming me down now in my first months in hardware. Like, everything can be much worse. Of course, there is a growth momentum, and what is good when you are just starting can be really bad thing to release when you're big and you have customers which are not your backers, which are not your like really fans and supporters that are interested only in core functionality, but are starting to pay attention to, I don't know, some smallest things, some options that you introduce and so on. So of course, the bigger audience we have, the more problems and more time we need to spend on polishing that up and understanding where we want to go. This one word is probably one of the nightmares that can happen. When I think about updates on web, it's as easy as just refreshing the page. Well, of course, there is data migration. Of course, there are some backend changes, but basically you can roll back, roll force, do some hot fixing on the go. It's quite easy. It's all there. It's not somewhere close to the customer. For the mobile apps, the platforms did it for us, right? Not a big problem to update the application. It cannot go wrong. You can screw up the functionality, you can upset your users, but updates cannot go wrong there. A bit harder on the desktops, but in the very bad case of something broken totally, you can always reinstall. Losing some customers, but still, if they need it, they will have it. For devices that you put in your home or somewhere, I don't even want to think about the cars. You just invest much time in this and pray for these guys not to become just bricks. And a bright story from the industry that happened just recently, I don't know if you heard about that, the smart locks promoted by Airbnb locked out their users, their actually homeowners of their homes. And that is really something where you should not fail. I'll be honest with you, we have a bunch of cameras that are stuck on old firmware because they can't update. They still work. Of course, from time to time we have single cases of cameras bricked and then we just do the replacement, usually. But for those that do not update, our firmware and backend team were smart enough to have the update by wire, and another way of doing that is updating by phone just through the Bluetooth. Of course, there should be some protection, and if your team is asking you to invest some more time in updates to retest something, if those tasks are taking more time than you anticipated, let them do it, because it's a no-fail zone at all. What works for us on the process side is updating people batch by batch. So that's something that is very useful in software world for features, like you do the split testing, yeah, very natural things for many of us already. But I learned that for hardware updates, that's even more important. You're not split testing, you're just testing if some rare cases that you just cannot physically reproduce in your artificial environment will pop up at some users. And you will know that at the first 200 people, not all the thousands of them. Customer experience is so much more physical than in software world. Like in software, we usually are talking, okay, when you're using this mobile application, where you are or where your user are. Is here in the airport at the registration desk and has only one hand? Is here in his bathroom reading something and so on? So you think about that stuff. For these devices, of course, quite an obvious thing, but bytes, treat, joy machine, right? What can be easier? Dogs are happy with it. Cats are not so happy because there is a threshold for the treat size inside. And as the treat gets smaller, our sensors are not so good at understanding how much treats are there. And if you are a cat, meowing and waiting for the treats, sometimes you can get a shotgun out of the device with all the treats. Of course, you will be happy with the amount, but like you may be a bit scared after it. It happens not so often, luckily, but it's something that could be like some of the things that we could polish more and more and more, but we cannot just support it for all the range of the treats. You know, LEDs, yeah, the lamps on the mobile phones that are showing you charging, receiving messages, and so on. Of course, home devices have them as well. And you can't imagine how hard it is sometimes for support guys to get the status of device and trying to understand what customer sees. Someone sees yellow as orange or vice versa. Is it fast? Is it 15 minutes left or still? Oh, okay. Is it fast blinking or slow blinking and so on? So something that is on my plate, and I'm starting to think about such things that I haven't seen before, never. Automatic reordering of the treats. We have the sensors, and it's the first time when I actually needed to think about what products from the treats product line we will make available for our users. They shouldn't be too small because otherwise they won't get over the sensor and they won't return to the default position. They shouldn't be too much because they will get not fresh. Yeah, the owners will be not happy. Our end customers, dogs and cats, will be not so happy. Laser movement. What can be easier, right? You move on the screen, it moves there. It turned out that on the bad connection, it not just lags, yeah? It makes the crazy jumps, which are not interesting for the cat. So as a product manager, I needed to sit down with our firmware guys and think, like they suggested some solution, and we thought, like, what can be the best one with some buffers that just smooth it out. And instead of that jumping stuff, you got, yeah, still slow movement of the laser with some lag, but it's smooth and cats like it. When we talk about onboarding, in hardware it's a bit different than in software. On one hand, you have the bugs already spent, and like with the AAA games, you have users who already invested some of their time to get the device, some of their money, and seemingly it should get them more patient to overcome initial friction and go to the joyful part. But also it raises expectation a lot. And for us, it reproduced in such things as when connectivity is not very good, instead of seconds of setup and what we say in our copies, we got to minutes. Some users even returned device to Amazon because of that. They just didn't want to wait. Luckily, most of them just check with our support and we explain that, hey, you have low level of the Wi-Fi, please allow it to be. Firmware for the hardware devices should be updated just at once. And this is one of the most important stuff because it's not an unusual case, for instance, for big retailer like Amazon or Walmart to have big stocks of devices. And if someone among your customers takes the device, sets up, and then can see the features that he just read on your site that were available in later firmware, it's also the reason to just return the device to Amazon. So such kind of things that, like with mobile app, with web application, I wouldn't think about. No big secrets here. Everything we do in the software world works good in the hardware world. We have a beta program, our internal beta crew testing the cameras at our homes, at our parents' homes. We recruited the people externally to test that, just send them device sometimes for free, just to know more and more information from different environments. And of course, testing their new hardware products with the end users, which for us means pets as well. I started to spend time on Amazon much more than I used to, just ordering my something I want to buy, and found it to be one of the top feedback channels. Kind of natural, yeah, but you also got such kind of things which not even sadden you, yeah, they just tell you nothing. You have such kind of things which praise you and it warms your heart, but actually also you don't get anything out of it. But in between, there are a lot of really cool reviews, some even allowing us to contact end users and start interacting with them, start understanding what's wrong with their environment or with our product. And as it's one of the biggest sales channel for Petcube, it's a main indicator of a small problem, even known issue, starting to be a big one. Even if you think that it's not important, people here will tell you always, and better than probably even if you call someone. Do you know about undone code? Like what's that in general in Lean? So that's a stuff started in Toyota as part of initial Lean effort, where any worker on the line can just pull a physical cord to stop the line in case he sees some systematic problem. Well, Amazon is quite inventive about that, because for them it means they stop your sales if they see repetitive complaints from the customers. And sometimes it's kind of hard to explain that, guys, it's how it works. The laser cannot move smooth if you got weak internet. Their subscription is subscription, and you should it's not something included from the box, and we'll come to it later. So it gets the teamwork and really the team sports to inventively answer those questions for Amazon to unblock that. And I cannot stress how much more important customer support it is with such products, as it's probably the best two-way feedback channel to understand in which environments we fail, to get on some problem and ignoring it, like according to my feelings, is even worse than in software. So in Petcube we have got a team that's 24/7 available on the phone. But apart from that, every support ticket that can be handled by the team is created for development. Support team member just grabs the guy that should solve it, and then it's all about the cooperation work so that it's solved within days. And maybe we can follow up with the guy who left the bad review, and sometimes we've got more stars than just one after solving the problem. And that really works very well, much better as for me as it works with the reviews on the App Store, on the Google Play. Monthly recurrent revenue and subscriptions. Well, it turned out that if you sell hardware product, people kind of think that you pay once and you shouldn't pay more. And sorry for that small font, which is not readable, but here it says that decided to return for £1, found out that after the purchase that you need a subscription to use device which costs $10–30 more per month. Beware of this. Like, buyers beware. In fact, it's all very transparent on the site, and you know what you pay, but it's kind of psychological thing. You buy the device, you assume there is something, and you don't need to pay more. And it's not the case only for Petcube. Nest cameras, which they started to produce a couple years ago, and they launched a really interesting product, Nest IQ cameras, this year with some AI face recognition, automatic recording of some particular events. Most of their negative reviews are about subscription and that people do not want to pay more. And that tends to become more and more a problem for hardware devices manufacturing that are entering your home. So my favorite example is Canary, our indirect competitor, home camera, who sold the device initially with all included, like all features, all storage for N days. And just at the beginning of this October, they decided to put some of the features under subscription. They failed their rating on Amazon by 2 points in like less than 2 weeks. And that was just crazy. Yesterday or the day before yesterday, they got some features back to the free plan because of that, just because of pressure from the community. So it's really hard for hardware products to explain why someone would benefit from a subscription, and it definitely goes from just storage, like Nest did, to moving more to the services like maybe for the pets we want some veterinary vet consultancy included. Maybe there should be some insurance, maybe something else, maybe dog walking services, and so on. And here again, all that works for their software works measuring conversions between different cohorts of people, doing the surveys, especially for the churned ones, experimenting with plan changes and paying more attention to contextual promotion inside the apps, on your user journey, turning moments, and so on. Now, this is probably my favorite, manufacturing. You can't imagine how many things can go wrong right there. Starting from walkers, literally soldering the light sensor that should make our night vision feature working as needed upside down so that it doesn't work at all, and it only is QC'd in the end of the batch before you are ready to really ship it to US. Your Chinese partner may say that some controller that you used for like year is in shortage on the market, and in 2 weeks you won't have it. And then your electronics firmware team is like, on fire, trying to find something pin-to-pin compatible and with the same driver to include into a firmware and so on. And of course, like you may say, well, you're a product manager, you're thinking about success of your product, metrics, and so on. You just can't ignore this stuff. You should be with the team, you should understand what are the consequences, what are the timelines, and so on. What helps to overcome that is having actual very tough control of the things, both remotely from Kyiv, from US office, and locally in China. It's controlling the supply chain as well. And we're not like really experts in that yet. We know a lot of stuff, but we still permanently find some opportunities to decrease the cost, to increase the speed of getting some components and so on. There are some important phases in manufacturing that product managers should be aware about, like production, validation, and testing, which is actually doing a small batch of devices, 100, 200, just to test out how good they are assembled, how the workers are ready or not. And that goes not only for launching the new product. Sometimes you need to invest time in that, even for changes during the usual lifetime. Like products are there on the shelves, but you need to make the changes. You need to stop manufacturing and invest something in doing the PVT and relaunching the manufacturing. And I cannot stress how important it is to have this person. So that was a usual scheme for me, sometimes filling both roles, and sometimes when lucky, having separate project manager, separate product manager with different focus. With manufacturing, if you don't have that guy, you're probably working not 12, but 16 hours a day trying to juggle all of that and understand. And we have a great lady in China who is pushing the manufacturing, who is doing the contracts there, and provides all that information. And I, as a product manager, is always informed and take part in making those decisions, because it might influence when do we do some release, when do we roll out the feature on their application and backend side, whether the firmware will be ready, whether the new product launch is according to the schedule that we did. And touching that part, I cannot omit the development lifecycle. In our case, it's not so software development lifecycle, but more a system. Making the pictures that we saw in their opening slides a bit more interesting. I would add backend there to show their different variety of tasks that we have. Like this is all that is on my backlog, and that's why it's very hard now when we have not so big team to manage it. We were thinking of splitting the teams, but we are too few, and the tasks are too variable to do that. We were thinking about just doubling the people, but, well, we have big investments in development and manufacturing itself, and we're constrained right now as a startup on just fast grow, and efficiency would not get at par with the costs. Scrum for everyone, just 2-week or month iteration won't work, because these tasks are really of different scope, and some people can do something very quickly on the app side. Something can be done on improving the media with, I don't know, worst quality of Android videos and iOS video. But when it comes to other features, like introducing the automatic scheduling of treating your dog, it all goes from here to here, maybe first rolling out on iOS, and then seeing what we do on Android, and so on and so on. So it's a crazy stuff. So what worked for us in the end of the day is still having the single deliveries backlog that I, as a product manager, is in charge of for the whole team. Like everything should be there, independent of which components we need. T-shirts, top-bottom estimate when we're still not sure about the big features, level of epics or some big complex stories. Then refining with the team and estimating it bottom down and seeing, by the way, whether it match or not. So still we need to have the swim lanes for separate functions, separate roles. No way we can get out of it right now. But all of them are aligned, like you see similar colors here and there, are aligned in a timeline to get the actual feature rolled out on backend, on firmware, on Android and iOS apps simultaneously, if we're talking about the Amazon skills integration, for instance. So that's what works currently, and I'm dreaming about moment in future when we can actually split that cross-functional teams and have a dedicated resources for each direction. Now, it's important to mention that new products is a good old waterfall with wall blow and whistles, because you can't make it otherwise. You have at least 6 to 9 months planning horizon to get the product to the market through all the stages of sourcing the components, doing the prototypes, tuning the firmware, launching the first industrial prototype, doing the PVT, and so on and so on. And then you should allow for another year of product lifetime and think what market landscape can be there, what technology landscape could be there, and that makes a 2-year planning horizon for the new product, which is quite hard. And I couldn't say at all that I'm starting to get good at it, so I'm learning now with all the company. And of course, all the gateways, all their strict manufacturing phases is something inevitable. So quite lean, and I would say not fear in this world, Kanban here, and quite waterfallish here. Just two parts of the mind of the product manager. Finally, the last thing, couldn't miss the opportunity to say that we're growing bit by bit. but we have quite a lot of interesting tasks. So if you guys have some colleagues, I know you are not the target audience for inviting right now, but automation, mature automations, backend gurus with some knowledge in networking, or guys who like to go deep on the hardware level with a firmware, who like Linuxes and core, please spread the word. We will welcome them very warmly. We need bright people. Thanks, that's it. And I welcome your questions, if any. I would say that, first of all, when there were no product managers at all, 3 founders took one direction each. So you may say that some fraction of their time were dedicated. Like virtually it was more, one was more focused on the cameras, the other one on subscriptions and monthly revenue, and the other one was about the social things. Now we have 2 more product managers, me and from recently another guy focusing on subscriptions.
First thing first, thanks for a great talk. And my question is, what about customizations? Because all this stuff looks like maybe not ugly, but it's not success for me. It's
You're about pets, or?
No. I mean your products. Do you have, like gold with Swarovski stuff, something like that?
Well, right now we have, like you see, these 3 colors here. For Petcube bytes, there was also like snow white color or something like that. And there were talks about customizations. If you Google up the first camera, you will show even some prototypes or renders with the fur on it. But it didn't pursue the customer's expectations. So from time to time we have such talks inside. But our designers are really very strict about doing those things, because it can look like you can easily shoot it up and it will look not according to this stylish look. Yeah. So yeah, there are talks, and it might be in future, but not now.
So in this case, you just simply can rename it to diamond black or majestic purple, and then it works.
Yeah, carbon black, something silver, and rose gold, I guess.
Like an iPhone.
What about your end users? How many of them cats, dogs, or other?
Earlier it was about 60 to 40 dogs and cats, or even more. Currently we got more and more cats. Yeah, and
How do you track it, and how does it influence your product?
tracked using the surveys. So in 2 weeks or so after purchasing your Petcube and registering it in the system, the customers get the survey with a lot of different questions that allow us to segment people and to see what is our audience. And like I will mention that in our audience that are not surprisingly more women. Some of them are young women like 20 to 30 who still do not have kids. They probably have a partner. They're probably living together, but they treat their pets as their kids. They are kind of training before getting to serious life. The other category is so-called empty nesters. So parents who let their children go. They are bored at home. They are paying most of their time and attention to their dogs or cats who might be old as well and sometimes require treatment and so on. So these 2 categories.
How many freedom do you have in product decision making?
Like it's always maximum freedom if you agree that with the people around you. So what I like in Petcube, yeah, and it differs a lot from previous experience, my experience, is that you are free to suggest everything, even like something for the packaging. If it seems like a good idea and the founders are there to judge on that as well, because they launched it, they talked with users, they know it's there in production. Like a small example, packaging of bytes, so it can be well mounted. And there was a suggestion from one of the guys, just a spontaneous suggestion, like, why don't we have a paper with a physical size of the holes that you need to drill? Like small, but very good thing. It was packaged there.
Are you doing investigation on the hardware, firmware level, or
As a product manager, you mean? Yes.
decisions in this level?
Yeah, I am doing that, but more on to understand the market and the tech landscape better. So of course, electronic guys and firmware guys can go into deeper details. From my side, it's more like keeping hand on the pulse, like what's happening there. Like, should we, for instance, finally switch to 5G network, 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi network and support it, because our competitors are still on 2.4 and that's quite crowded, and that's why we have some of the problems with connectivity. Or like, what are the opportunities of Qualcomm launching 5G next year in USA? Can we somehow benefit from it or not? So yes, I am doing that, and then of course I'm using help of my teammates to get into the details, and that they can prototype different cameras, for instance, different Wi-Fi models, compare the results, and we make the choice.
Question regarding business model. So you have the subscription part with the, you call it Petcube Care.
Yeah.
And you pushing towards direction to the security about the like home security kind of thing. What is about vanishing value prop on this part? And
Sorry, what about what?
value prop.
Mm-hmm.
Among like playing with your pets and home security, because there is a lot of solutions in the market. And the second part of the question is about the business model itself, because you have hardware, you have subscription part. What about other type of monetization possible
Mm-hmm.
with this type of solutions?
Okay, so the first question is about differentiation with competition. Well, if you look at the landing page of Petcube and landing page of Nest, they're kind of mirrored upside down. If we are talking about first connection with your pet, looking after it, and then using it for security purposes, Nest is doing vice versa. The first target is security, and then they also say, by the way, we have two-way talk opportunity, so you can talk with your pet and kick it off the couch. Yeah, so we're always competing with them, inevitably. All of us are competing with the cheaper cameras straightly delivered from China that can cost $20 for same line-up of characteristics, but different experience, right? So the differentiation for us are pets, of course. We have additional features on top. We have content that is about pets. And by the way, answering your second part of the question, we're investing more and more in content, starting to work, well, we always worked with them, but starting to develop more strategies about pet celebrities, about some pet content platforms, and so on. And that's, of course, is another future opportunity for monetization. Yeah, like the goal is still the same, connect all the pets from the internet. Like, for instance, why you call your pet to monitor it? Your pet might someday call you, right? There were some, questions there.
Before introducing a new feature or any update, how do you do the market validation?
Good question, thanks. So for the new device, it's more about estimating the market size and market growth, like always. Yeah, you see that, for instance, like what is presented on the treating pets side of technology or on the food side of technology, and can we enter there? Like, then of course we check it with our current users. Would they be interested in this device? And that is done both in-house, like there were some in-house interviews, more informal, and surveys to get just the quantitative data, right? And that's always not some standard process. Yeah, you try to ask that. For instance, you try to ask whether people are interested in anti-chew cord. Yeah, that your anti-chew cord. It's like cord, the power cord, that is safe from your pets biting it and getting the high voltage or just damaging the cord. So we ask even these questions to understand whether they're going to pay for it or not interested at all.
Yeah, so actually two short questions. First, do you have something for massive dogs? And second is regarding Kickstarter. So your company has experience like
Yeah.
2 or 3 times. Can you share some experience?
Unfortunately, I'm not prepared for this second question. Like, the thing is, the only thing probably that I can share about that is that Kickstarter is a good additional check for market fit. So it will definitely answer if you fit or not, and it might be a tool for persuading your investors to make that decision finally and finishing the negotiations, for instance. That was the case, I believe, for 2 first cameras at least. But I'm not prepared. I do not have all the details from that historical part. And sorry, first question for the big dogs. Well, yeah, your dog won't be playing with the laser, I guess, but who knows? You should try it. With the treats is for dogs of any size, in fact, and like in Ukraine, treats are not presented in such a variety as in USA. So we're usually talking about the, like dog food, and that's it. They have a big differentiation between treating and food. Treats is something that you cannot just pour in a bowl. You can, for instance, in a day, 10 treats is a norm for the dog or for the cat, and that's it. Yeah, so that's why you can try it still.
And it's a question complementary to the previous one regarding the Kickstarter part.
Yeah.
I know that it's also a good tool for convincing like guys like Amazon that you're a valuable player.
Right, right. Big retailers.
Yeah, and the question is actually about your cooperation with Amazon. You mentioned it twice with Alexa and Amazon Dash. What about like revenue share or any other type of what your partnership actually with
Well, actually, Amazon has usually plain conditions for everyone. So if you're selling something, is, if I'm not mistaken, 30%, quite a big margin for them. And regarding the Dash replenishment, I'm not sure I can share that numbers, but it's like vice versa. What they sell using our app and our devices, our sensors, they share some percent with us in their other direction. And by the way, for the starting companies, they have also something called subscribe with Amazon. So it's not AWS, the clouds, yeah, but SWA. They have a lot of funny abbreviations, which is really good to start because it drives all the people with Amazon accounts that already made purchases to your subscription. In our case, we started previously with Stripe, yeah, and it's working good for us, so no need to switch there. Amazon still is a big player, and not all solutions are good for a company like ours, where we want to have our margin as well. Yeah, good question, and I will answer it partially. I'm not fully prepared because we have great guys in operational logistics department. As far as I remember, we have 1-year warranty now, and like we are usually just replacing the devices because it's easier. We are thinking about opening some service centers, yeah, to make it closer to the customer. But in general, yeah, just replace and refurbish on the factory works easier in our case for now.
Is supply chain somehow related with Ukraine?
Ukraine office is a place from where everything starts, everything continues, everything is designed. We have office in San Francisco, which is mainly about sales and marketing, but we also got a couple of bright engineers there. And we have China guys to control the manufacturing. All the sourcing is, of course, China, like all the components. We, like initially founders tried to see what is the opportunities in Ukraine. And while there are some assembly opportunities, we have no experience here for the plastic, for instance. Like China is a plastic king for that. Like any time of plastic, even metal can be done here, but not plastic. For the boards, yeah, it's possible. And in my mind, I just have this example of Ajax, the security systems here, who are doing the assembly right here. And over time, there's always, like, we're gravitating to that decision. We want to do something there, but it requires, like, more resources that will be available to starting it in parallel. We cannot just stop there, yeah, and start something here. So in long term, yes, that's definitely one of their internal goals. Sorry, we need to stop. Thank you for the question, guys. We can continue in there.